Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of a quarantine kitchen happy hour. We're doing a coffee hour. Let me adjust that a little bit. Doing a little coffee hour this morning. Some of these classes, as you know, I got to start early. It's kind of an all-day process, and really, to do some of these things, it takes a long time, right? It's kind of a complex process, but what I'm doing here is breaking it down into smaller pieces. I got a duck this week. I should mention I got a duck from the Oak Park Farmers Market. They picked up the tab to buy me a duck from PT Farms. It's a local farm out in Ione, California, and they raise several different types of animals. Gosh, it's really interesting stuff. You can see them down at Oak Park Farmers Market just about every weekend, and they're out there with the chickens that they raise. The Freedom Ranger chickens, they call them, right? They raise hogs, Berkshire Duroc cross hogs out there. They raise Dorper sheep. They raise turkeys. I hear that those turkeys are going to be available in Sacramento, not just at the farmers market, but in other places as well. A longtime friend of the show, V. Miller Meats, is going to be offering those turkeys this year. So you're going to be seeing these PT Ranch people around a lot, and they are doing poultry right. I have kind of done a little research on these guys, and I've seen them a few times down at the market, and it's a family ranch, and they are raising all of these animals. Gosh, they also do honey and olive oil and things like that. It's a fascinating operation, just the kind of thing you want to hear about, part of our local food system here. And so definitely want to get down to Oak Park Farmers Market and check out PT Ranch, as well as all of the other farmers out there. I also brought some beautiful produce that I'm going to be folding into the show later on. The Oak Park Farmers Market, it's a small farmers market, and that cares, right? They're out there. They've got safety protocols out there for COVID. You can see that they're really, really following it. It's a small market with lots and lots of heart. They are out there and they are open. Let's see, Saturdays, I believe it's from 9 o'clock in the morning to 1 p.m. on Saturdays. And again, PT Ranch is out there. And then also, I didn't realize this, but they're also doing a evening Wednesday farmers market out there in Oak Park as well. And that goes from 3 to 7 in the evenings if you want to get out there. And there's all kinds of deals out there, and you can kind of get subsidized food dollars out there. They give out little wooden tokens, and they give kids little coupons so they can go out and buy produce. It's a lot of fun, and for the whole family. Okay, so get on out there and check it out. So as I started to say, this process is going to be complicated, but what I wanted to do was I got this duck to play with, and I don't want to just do a roast duck. I've done roast chicken before. I want to kind of start introducing some more advanced techniques, and so and maybe some not so advanced techniques, right? So I'm going to throw together some different chef things for you guys, taken in small pieces, and then I'm going to incorporate them all into a whole at the end. Okay, the 4 stages. I think it's 4 stages here, if I remember it right. I don't really work off of notes or anything, guys. It's all at the top of my head here. Okay, sorry. But I'm going to show you a duxelle. It's a mushroom stuffing, basically, right? So chopped up mushrooms, and I'm going to saute those off. A little bit of onion I have today. Usually it's shallot, right? But it's quarantine, right? So I'm going to use what I got, right? So a little bit of onion, a little bit of mushroom. I'm going to cook that down, deglaze a little wine in there, reduce it down, and that's just kind of a standard preparation that chefs will use out there. Again, it's called duxelle, D-U-X-E-L-L-E, and it's just a base cooking technique that you can put in your back pocket, and you can use it whenever you need, hey, a mushroom filling, or hey, I'm making a mushroom sauce. I'll start it with a duxelle and then hit it with a little cream and reduce that down, and boom, I've got mushroom cream sauce that's got that like sauteed mushroom flavor in there, right? It's like permeating. It's really, really good. So duxelle is a base technique. Another technique is just basically fabricating poultry. I have broken down chicken 2 different ways in my little quarantine kitchen classes, which you can see over at youtube.com over there. Okay, look for Industry Cooking Classes channel over there at YouTube, and you can see tons and tons of these videos. And like I said, broken chicken a few different ways. Waterfowl is a different classification of poultry, and it's a different body type, and I kind of want to break that down and show you what all that looks like. And what I'm going to really do is just completely bone this thing out. Okay, so you're really going to see the anatomy of a duck today, but you'll see it kind of in reverse. We're boning that duck out. So once we bone that duck out, some parts of the duck are tender, some parts of the duck are tough. I'm going to take those tough parts of the duck and in another stage of this class or this educational journey we're taking here, and I'm going to introduce force meats or farce, the French term for basically a meat stuffing or a seasoned and ground meat. You know, you use it for a filling. A meatball is a farce or force meat. Dumpling filling, you know, Chinese dumpling filling, that's a farce, right? Okay, so I want to introduce force meats or farce to you guys today. And so that'll be a third part, okay? This is like deep down culinary school stuff we're talking about here. And then finally, we're going to assemble all of this into what we call a ballotine, okay? And this is kind of this long tubular shape. It's a boned out poultry usually, okay? And what you have is the skin on the outside. You'll have, you know, a layer of meat inside of that, and then you'll have a layer of like a force meat going through it. So it's skin, fillet of meat, force meat up the center, right? And that's what we're going to make. When we roast this off and serve it hot, it's called a ballotine. When we poach this off and serve it cold, it's called a galantine, okay? This is like deep culinary school stuff, but basically, I don't want to just do a plain old roast duck. It's really simple and easy roasting, and I've already talked about that. I want to throw a ton of culinary technique at you over the day's time. And then later this afternoon, by the way, I'm going to be following up with a review of roasting technique. We're going to roast off this stuffed boneless duck. We'll roast that off. And so we'll talk about that roasting technique again, you know, just as kind of a review. And I also, tonight, I've been dying to just get to so many culinary techniques. I'm going to show you guys how to make some mashed potatoes, okay? I've done, let's see, I did a potato casserole in the past, and I still want to get to other potato preparations in the future, right? This is just not even to mention this thing in the back of my mind, a whole third show that I want to do, Sugar Cooking with Chef Dave, okay? Where I'm going to start doing my pastry lectures, okay? And throw all that together, you know, for the ladies, okay? And so that'll be a third show that we got going on. Hey, there's some comments. Cool. Okay. So pastries and things like that. Okay, yummy. What is best knife for this? Oh, okay. We're going to get to that. Alma, you just asked about the best knife. I am going to be working with, let me get rid of this chair here. I'll be talking about this later, but I'm going to use a flexible boning knife, okay? It's very flexible, and it's going to allow me to get right up against the bones of this animal and get all of the meat off of there. So that's kind of the name of the game. Let me get back over here. And welcome again, everybody. Glad I got chats and everything working. This is totally cool. Okay, I got rid of the chair. And let me get a little sip of coffee and welcome everyone. Oh, that's great. Okay. So I kind of broke down everything that we're going to be seeing here during the day, okay? In the morning, the first thing I need to do, and I do this in most things that I do in the kitchen, there's a certain progression that I do. And I usually ask myself, first thing is like, what needs to cook? What needs to get going first, right? And so the first thing that I have for this is for my force meat, my stuffing, I need to cook off that duxelle. That's something that needs to cook. And everything else that I'm doing in this morning, I think that's the only thing I really need to get onto a fire. So that's going to be the first thing that we cover, okay? So duxelle, later on when I edit this and everything, I'll have the recipe kind of up there so you guys can see it, but it's very, very simple. Let me show you these ingredients. Again, I never talk about recipes. It's always about a technique, okay? So this is flat leaf parsley I'm gonna kind of shave up. I've got some thyme that's gonna, just big bunches of thyme that's gonna kind of get incorporated into it as I'm sauteing. I've got a little piece of onion here. Normally with this duxelle, we're using shallot traditionally, but I don't have any shallot today. So I'm just gonna use a little bit of onion, just a little aromatic to work against these mushrooms, okay? I've got some salt. I've got like 2 mushrooms here. I don't think I can fit much more into my preparation. It's just 1 duck. They're big mushrooms. And then I got salt and a little white wine over here. I'll be sauteing up these mushrooms and a little of my, just some fat that I have around here. It's rendered, you know, bacon and duck and chicken fat. It's an appropriate fat to use for this, okay? It's my standard thing. So first thing I need to do is cook stuff off. And after I get stuff cooked off, I want to cool it off, this duxelle, because I'm going to stuff it into this cold preparation later on. And I don't want a bunch of hot stuff in there, okay? So number one thing I got to do is cook this up. Let's start cutting things up, okay? I'm going to move things off my board. I'm working on a theme song here, you know. Kind of jazzy, kind of, you know, Mad Men style. Yeah, I see that. I see that. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, why don't we cut up these mushrooms, okay? I've got the mushrooms here. I haven't washed them or anything. I was going to kind of go through that with you guys, okay? So let me get a little rinse on these guys. When I'm washing mushrooms, it's just super quick in and out of the water, okay? La 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 la, wackadoo, wackadoo. Coming at you with a couple of rinsed off mushrooms, very, very quick. I don't want them soaking in water, okay? They're like a sponge. I'm sure most of you know this. They're like a sponge, and they're just going to soak up that water. And so daubing them off, getting all of that excess water off of my mushrooms. And then I am going to get rid of a bowl and take you on down to the board, okay? Now, this isn't a fancy cut. We're going to chop it up. And a lot of times, a little kitchen secret here, when chefs have mushroom stems, what do they throw that in? Hey, they chop it up and throw it in their duxelle. And that's exactly, again, what we're making that word again. D-U-X-E-L-L-E, duxelle. And so I have my standard French knife, and I'll go ahead and just start chopping up my stems, okay? Just a little review of holding that knife, okay? I kind of balance the knife on my finger, basically, right there. It's usually right at that handle, and then I just put my thumb on the other side. It's balanced on my index finger. I put the thumb on the other side, and I'm basically holding that blade. I wrap my hands around, and I'm just gonna roll that knife forward. You see that chopping motion, and I'm not doing this pretty. I just want to make it fast, okay? So I just chop those guys around. They're not going anywhere. And I'm going to do the same with these big mushrooms. I'm going to kind of cut them down. I'm going to go across the top, maybe kind of break them down a little bit. And I'm just going to go across the top again in another direction and just chop them on down, okay? So they're broken up most of the way. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to go across, just a few cuts to break it down. And I think I can start incorporating all of it together, and we're going to go through in a chopping motion, okay? Just right over the top. Some people like to steady the blade with that second hand, so I'm leaving my hand completely flat there. Never curl your fingers as you do this. And I'm just going to go through back and forth, and we're going to chop this up real quick. I think you guys got the idea here. You have seen me chop before. Boom, boom, boom. Bring them into the center again. The more they spread out, the less efficient your chop is. Chop, 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 chop. Da, 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 da. Yeah. All right. And bringing it in. And choppy chop. And I'm just going to keep on going. We're taking them down. Again, I'll emphasize, if you have mushrooms that you need to use up, hey, make a little bit of duxelle. You can put this inside of some pasta for raviolis, right? You can stuff a chicken breast with duxelle. As I said, you can finish a sauce with duxelle or start a sauce with duxelle. It's a kitchen technique. It's not a recipe. I'll chop it down even more because this is going into a stuffing, into a duck. And when we're working with this duck, it's going to be a little, it flops around a little bit. It's a little soft. And I don't want these big chunks of stuff here. I want this stuff to kind of work in to the duck itself. This will cook down, but I still may not use all of this mushroom duxelle. I can make mushroom duxelle and toss it with olive oil and pasta and just chow down. Duxelle is a technique. Okay. Those guys are chopped up. I'm going to set them aside, and I need to get a shallot done. Actually, I'm using onion today, okay? So let me just kind of clean up my board here, get these mushrooms off the table. So you see how I pick it up with my knife and I just pour it in. Oftentimes you'll see me just bringing the bowl to the item, and then I will kind of get the rest of this. Edge of my knife, the angle of my knife is about the same angle I would use to sharpen a knife when I'm picking things up. I'm going to wipe this all down. I want a nice clean board for my next item. I like to work like a sushi chef. Wipe it down every time. Everything I start on, it's like starting a clean sheet of paper to start a clean note. Wipe it on down, get rid of this stuff. And I think I got a pretty nice and clean board there, and I'm ready for an onion. And you guys have seen me doing onions before, if you know me. If not, I'm going to go ahead. I've got the onion top and bottom. This was just an onion I had in my my refrigerator that I want to use up, okay? And I'm going to actually use all of this. Normally, I might just use about half of that guy. If it was a shallot, that's about how much I would use. But I like onions, and I am going to use a lot of onion in this. This will all cook down if you know your onions. I'm going to do the old cisellet trick here. I'm going to do a few horizontal cuts. And I think what I will do, because I've been chopping with this knife and everything, I think what I would like to do right now, since I'm going into an onion, is I'm going to steel my blade. Wait, let me hold that up. As I do this, I say it all the time, I use the whole blade and I use the whole steel. Long, smooth strokes. I'm pulling my knife. Some chefs go the other direction. They go forward, okay? I pull. Okay, I'm going to wipe off my blade. We're going to go back to that onion. And so I'm going to make a few horizontal cuts across the front. Oh gosh, I already did that. Now I'm going to go over the top. As I do this again, I'll point out the tip of my knife is not going all the way through. Okay, just to point that out. We're going to be mincing this onion up, by the way, just like our mushroom, same size. So I cut a bunch of little slashes on that dude. Now I'm going to turn it and I'm going to go across the face. I want to steel it up again. I was really chopping a minute ago. Just a couple of strokes. I kind of wipe it. I get back into it. Doesn't need to be pretty. I'm just going to mince. And now I push that last bit of onion over and take care of the rest. If you haven't seen me do this before, you've probably seen other people on like food TV do it. All of those celebrity chefs. They're so pretty. You got me with my cock eye. That's why this is free, folks. I ain't pretty enough to charge for this. All right, still chopping, still chopping. And I'm going to keep on going. I want it pretty fine. You know, when I'm chopping shallots for like French sauce work, things like that, I want that stuff to just about melt away, disappear into the sauce. So that's the chop I'm doing right now. This is not a chop, actually. This is a mince. To be a bit more accurate, if you want to be a stickler, and I am a huge stickler. I feel like in the kitchen, words mean things just like any industry. There's a language. Mince means this. Chop means something different. Chop means that, okay? A little bit rougher. But basically this mince, you want it to disappear into whatever it is that you're working at. And I think I'm about there, okay? That stuff's gonna cook down to nothing right there, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and throw it in a little container for now. And I'm gonna actually start cooking before I wanna get things on the fire. So I will actually start cooking before I get into the next thing I gotta cut, which is just a little fresh parsley here, and I gotta put together a little bouquet. So I got my onion and I got my mushroom. This duxelle is like 5 ingredients. I'm gonna wipe down again, work like a sushi chef. I always say, if there are any people out there that are my former students, you hear that stuff in your dreams, I'm sure. I say it enough. Back in my heyday, I was getting a new group every 6 weeks and going over cooking basics with them. breaking a chicken, breaking a lamb, breaking half a hog with each class every 6 weeks. Okay, I'm gonna start, as I said, I wanna start cooking. Now I have my 2 items that I can cook ready to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and start this pan. And I've just got I've got a big flame under there just to kind of get the thing going. I got to melt some fat here. That pan was ice cold, so I've got a little of my granny fat here. You know, it's like grandma kept a you know, coffee can full of fat. That's kind of what I do. So I got a little fat in the pan, and fat will expand as it gets hotter. I like to put fat in a hot pan, and that pan was already getting hot. And I'll start lining some of this stuff up that's going into the pan right now. Ooh, I forgot one thing. Oh, am I out of them? I'm out of my bay leaves right there. I gotta find those dudes. All right, and I've got a big old thyme sprig that I'm gonna throw in the mix. There it is. Sorry, still working on camera angles. And I'll put that off to the side. So we're just gonna have, so far it's just onion, mushroom, thyme, a little bit of duck bacon fat, salt, pepper, and then in a minute here, I'm gonna start doing a chiffonade of these leaves. I don't really need them until this cools off a little bit anyway. Just over here. I'm gonna get a sip of coffee while we wait. What I'm waiting for right now, this is classic searing, and I've done searing again and again in these classes. When we are searing, I need a super high heat, a little bit of fat in the pan, and when I throw things in there, we're gonna kind of step back and we're gonna allow it to color. I even wanna get a little color on these onions, in fact, today. So I am throwing this in. There go my onions. And I'm gonna add a pinch of salt to that. And I've talked about this trick before. A little pinch of salt is going to help draw the moisture out of those onions, okay? Salt is my friend. That wasn't so much for seasoning. That was for drawing out the moisture. Can I just get this freaking banjo out of here? There we go. Now I can think. We got a coffee. Okay. So right now, just sweating onions a bit. And I'm going to kick up that heat a little bit. This won't, I can't really get brown until I get some of the moisture out of these onions. So let me get that on there for you. Get a little more light on the subject. That's a little better. Or is it? I think you can see a little better without that glare. All right, let's see if I got, while that's kind of cruising, let's see if I got any comments out there. Let's see, good morning. I hear it every time. Art, one of my old students is out there. Yeah, he hears this stuff in his dreams. Oh yeah, chicken fat. You better believe there's a bunch of chicken fat in there. Duck fat, you name it. That fat's in there. I can still see steam coming off of this pan. Get back in there. I hope I'm not yelling at you guys. But I just gave it a little toss, right? And we saw steam coming out of there. I'm going to grab a spoon and spread this out a little bit so even more steam can escape. And I'm not seeing much going on here. I think we're down to just the onion and not so much the water. I think it's cooked out. Now it's time for the mushrooms, okay? Get the mushrooms in there. Now these mushrooms are going to suck up all the fat in that pan. You may well see me add a little bit more fat to this. Give it a little toss. You don't have to toss, just stir it in. I toss for convenience only. And I don't want this swimming in fat, but I do need enough fat to get a nice golden brown in there. And if you don't have enough fat, you're gonna start getting a nice blackened black in there, okay? So let me get a little more fat in there. Like I said, those mushrooms are like sponges. They will suck it up. Tiny bit more fat. Don't do too much. You can always add more, okay? You can always add more. I'm going to throw in this thyme sprig, and it's just going to kind of hang out in there and get a little essence going, okay? There's no garlic in here, by the way. This is just usually just kind of a shallot thing. I'm going to give it a little toss. I'm going to spread it out. I'm going to throw that thyme in there, and I'm going to step away from the pan, and I think I'm going to ease that up to about 7 out of 10. We're cruising. We're cruising. Another sip of coffee. Yeah, sing break. Oh yeah, let's go back to it. There it is. Oh, I hope everybody's doing great on this Memorial Day weekend. Take a moment to reflect on what Memorial Day means. I think a lot of us kind of forget. Memorial Day. Veterans Day is about the veterans, living or dead. Memorial Day is about the honored war dead. Oh yeah. I live on a cemetery, and there was quite a lot of flags out there yesterday. Okay, so I just gave it another toss. The thyme isn't more incorporated in there. It's kind of giving it a little more of the flavor, and I'm going to step away, and I'm going to let that develop a little color. I will be right back. While this is cooking, I still have a bit of choppery to do, okay? So let's do that. I can chop while this is working. I'm going to do that cut that I have shown you before that is called the chiffonade, okay? This is just more of a fine shred, okay? For this one, I need a razor sharp knife, so I'm busting out my steel again. Are you guys noticing a theme here? You need to be steeling a lot. There's certain jobs I won't do where I won't steel my knife before I do them, and slicing herbs very, very fine, right? That's one of those jobs. I'm always going to steel my knife before I get into that. Shaving scallions, you know, things like that. Cutting tomatoes, it's really hard to get through tomato skin. Get a razor sharp knife and it's like butter, okay? When you start working with sharp knives, it's just, you never want to go back to dull ones, I'll tell you that. Sharp knives feel good in your hand. It's like hitting that perfect golf ball, that perfect baseball, that home run. It almost feels like nothing, right? Back to these mushrooms. Okay, I'm going to give them another stir. I can feel it. I'm developing a bit of color here. Now, I'm going to be cutting some herbs here, but the next ingredient that goes in the pan, next ingredient on deck, is I'm going to do a little splash of white wine in just a second here, just to do a little deglaze on it, okay? But let's go ahead and start slicing this herb. So I think you can see the board there. I'm going to grab my leaves, and this will be incorporated into the duxelle as it's cooling. I'm not going to throw it into the pan. I'm doing that same knife hold there. My hand, my left hand, is doing what we call the claw. It's doing a very tiny version of this. I've bunched up my leaves together. Sometimes you'll see people actually rolling them like a cigar. I think parsley is pretty sturdy, and so I just kind of bunch it up a little bit with my finger. I'm not being too rough, and but a little tough love, okay? And then I'm just going to do that rocking motion, super, super fine, okay? Do 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 do. Choppy, choppy. And that's how I'm going to leave it. See how fine that shred is? It's beautiful. Okay. And you'll see little bits of that in my finished duck as we slice it up. There's some long, some short. It looks like a rough chop, but it is a cut, right? I don't like it just a rough chopped herb where you just run through it. There's no love there. There's a little bit of love in this. It takes some skill to do that. Get rid of that big piece. Take a look at that. I'm going to look over at these mushrooms, and I'm going to hit